This conference will now be recorded.
Welcome back, everyone. So, now moving on to the fifth knowledge area of business analysis, we will look into what is requirement analysis and design definition. Okay, so in this particular knowledge area, you will see the slow transition happening from the requirements part to the actual implementation part because you're slowly moving towards the design and then more slowly into the development and testing another sections of it. Okay, so what actually constitutes requirements analysis and design definition is nothing but it focuses on understanding, analyzing and defining the various requirements of the project so that you can ensure the proper alignment between the needs and goals of the stakeholders and what you're going to deliver at the end. It all starts with understanding the stakeholders needs and the context behind it, like what's the implicit need or implicit expectation behind every business requirement. You try to get an understanding on that, and then you get into eliciting the requirements, which is nothing but the other word for requirements gathering, wherein you start uh, getting the information about what is expected from the specific software application. Okay, and once the requirements are with you, then you put your thought process into it. You analyze the requirements, you scrutinize the requirements for clarity, completeness and consistency. These are the three C's. I'm repeating: whenever you have the requirements captured, then you analyze it by applying the three C's of clarity, completeness and consistency. Okay, clarity, it's again very simple to understand. The requirements should be clear enough. There should not be any ambiguity. Could it be this or could it be that? Completeness in the sense this information should not be incomplete. You should ensure that you have whatever requirements, details should be there in order to get that implemented later. And consistency in the sense sometimes there will be changes in the requirements that will be coming up. Now you need to ensure that whatever changes are being mentioned are also consistently maintained across so that there is again some stakeholders saying a particular point whereas the other one saying something different. That sort of misalignment should not be there. Okay, so you would if again looking at the food delivery app, it could be about, for example, the order tracking conflicts that could be there with the need of user privacy. Okay, now how do you ensure that you are providing the real-time order tracking details to the customer while at the same time maintaining the user privacy? What do I mean by that? So if you have to really give the order tracking details, then you need to have an idea of what's the current location of the customer, right? Then you can say that, okay, your food is being delivered from this restaurant, which is around this much distance away from where you are right now. It takes around this much time. So you are actually accessing the customer's current location. Is that conflicting with the user's privacy? If yes, then what needs to be done? If no, is it okay? So all these things need to be looked into. You're balancing the requirements with the sort of analysis that you need to do. Okay, so that comes into picture. Then you define the scope of the solution, because you if you start providing better features, there is no end to it. The more you think through it, the more the scope keeps on increasing. That should not happen. So you have to clearly define that, okay, for this specific phase of release, we have to stop with this set of requirements. Anything beyond this is a good to have, which we can put up for the second phase or later on after that. After having defined this, you get the business requirements properly jotted down, and then from business requirements, you move towards the stakeholder requirements, and from there, you get your solution requirements and the transition requirements. Of course, you get the verification of and validation of all these requirements sorted out. So this brings your requirements analysis and design definition. Let's also get into the final one in this particular video itself. So it is nothing but your solution evaluation. So what happens in this is nothing but, as a business analyst, you might not be involving yourself in the development and testing of a particular project deliverable, but you would be playing a key role in ensuring that whatever is being delivered to the stakeholders is matching their business requirements and the business objectives. So how do you do that? That forms part of this final knowledge area of solution evaluation. So here it starts with measuring the solution performance. Like unless until you quantify by setting up some parameters, you can really not be sure of is it really meeting the purpose or not. So you define some parameters which you will be monitoring and using that to measure the performance metrics. In the example of food delivery app again, maybe some parameters could be something like average delivery time by the customer, or how is the user engagement of the app, or number of successful orders, or the common user reviews and ratings, or the amount of time the app is down. Okay, how easily is your app scaling up when the number of concurrent users are higher? So all of these are certain metrics which you come up with by, of course, discussing with the business stakeholders, and you put these into analysis. Like you come up with the measurement of these particular metrics. Okay, this comes under measuring your solution performance. Once you measure, you need to know the effectiveness of your solution, right? So what does it imply? For example, I get to see that my app is up for 90% of the time. Now, 90% of the time might seem good to me, but it might not seem good to the stakeholders. So you need to again understand what is a good measurement, right? So is 90% uptime is good, or is the stakeholder expecting your app, the particular mobile app, to be up and running more than 95% of the time? You need to have that clarity. For example, if you are running a banking app, okay, so banking apps are expected to be up and running 24 cross 7. Even if it is not running for 1 or 2 hours, it is mandated by the central authority, central banking authority, that you should inform the customers that there is going to be a downtime of this 1 hour or this much 2 hours because of a software update or whatever it is, right? So it is mandatory 24 cross 7. So there is no scope of even 100, even 1% downtime. Similarly, your food delivery app may not have such a stringent uh, mandate that it should be like this, but maybe 95% is good enough. So you need to know what is the actual value which is good enough, and are you meeting those measurement performance improvement, performance effectiveness, or is it like your app is a little below that, or is it beating those expectations also? Okay, and just in case, let's say that somewhere your app is not performing as per what uh, parameters have been, or what targets have been set for each parameter. What do? You need to identify a list of those parameters and see how things can be improved. For example, we thought about the number of successful orders, right? So now the stakeholders may say we want to maintain a rate of, again, 95% of successful orders. Now, if over a period of time it has been observed that you have been able to successfully deliver 80% of the orders, so there's a gap of 15%. What needs to be done to improve this? What can be done to move from 80 to 95? Now that comes as a improvement, right? Measure. So this is the one parameter where you need to improve. Similarly, there could be another parameter like something like user engagement, right? So the amount of time customer spends on the app, we should keep it within 3 minutes for any order to be created. Now if the customer is taking more time, so it's the app is perhaps not as much intuitive. So what do? You again set a target that it should be 3 minutes. So this way, it's not just identifying improvements, you also have to work upon it. Once it is done, sometimes what happens is you identified a particular shortcoming, okay, and when you get to sit down and find out how this needs to be achieved, then you realize that there is a limitation, not in terms of the way the app is functioning, but there's a solution limitation itself. What could it mean? Means, for example, there is a hardware limitation, like okay, these many servers are used, so with this setup we cannot go beyond this particular number, or the number of concurrent users are way too many, and we need to really upgrade our software, or maybe the solution architecture itself has to be redefined, then redesigned, then only we can meet this. So now there is a solution limitation. So you need to evaluate these solution limitations, which you may not be able to change in the short term, but it becomes your long term goal for the business to get that sorted out. Okay, so it's not enough to just identify improvements and leave it at that. Out of those improvements identified, which can be really worked upon and which are more like a limitation, which needs to be identified and put on the list for now and taken upon into action later. And then you need to assess if these stakeholders are really happy, and are they content with the way the improvements are coming up, or is there anything else that they're expecting. Sometimes they might come up with a new parameter which needs to be measured, or sometimes they might do some analysis, and they may put up another target instead of what was met as a achievement. Okay, and apart from that, you also need to monitor the changes in the business environment, because sometimes the reason for a not so good performance is not because your app is not good, but because the external circumstances itself is not good. Maybe all the food delivery apps are not performing well in a given period of time because of some reason, like all of a sudden people have stopped ordering outside because that particular month is actually a lean period. Sometimes it happens. So such sort of business environment related changes also need to be monitored to have a better understanding of how things can happen. And of course, at the end, you review the business case and benefits realization, and as a BA you provide your recommendations. We also looked into the risk assessment earlier, so that also comes into picture when you do this solution evaluation, because sometimes as part of improvement you come up with certain suggestions which will have some inherent risks involved in it. So you need to understand those things also. And a lot number of times what happens is your initial discussions with your stakeholders might lead to some requirements, but later, a few months down the line, when you launch the app, then you come across certain production environment related issues because of the actual customers using something which was not even unheard of earlier. Such sort of issues might come up, and you need to really look at the risk involved in that and how you can get those resolved at the earliest and things like that. So these all will be part of your solution evaluation. Again, if you look into the details, all of these are pretty much what you say. You don't require uh, that you need to go through a particular book or a set of conditions to understand that okay, these all are part of your project delivery. You might eventually end up implementing all of these things without even knowing that okay, this is the jargon behind it, or this comes under a specific knowledge area of business analysis, etc. Okay, having said that, we try to have a sort of high level understanding on all of these six knowledge areas till now. I hope you have taken notes of all the key points for each and every knowledge area. Just uh, keep revising every now and then, so that it remains with you without even having to go through it. You'll be able to just be able to. You may not be using the same terminology, but still, you should be in a position wherein you can talk about it if asked about in an interview. Okay, I think that helps. So we close this segment here, and in the next segment we'll look at the underlying competencies and the techniques which have been defined in Babok. Okay, thanks everyone.